Welcome to San Antonio's Influence Magazine show, the premier talk show where we introduce you to influential individuals doing significant work in the city of San Antonio and surrounding areas. Celebrate the spirit of business, leadership, and innovation. Substance abuse and mental illness, two dark secrets that a lot of our families are dealing with. Today we're going to introduce you to an agency here in town called Rise Recovery and its wonderful leader, Evita Morin. Evita, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just start at the bottom and maybe talk to us about your background. Tell us about where you're from, that kind of stuff.
Sure. I was born and raised in San Antonio. I ended up moving to Hondo, Texas in the middle of nowhere after my middle school. I went to high school, graduated there, and then I, for lack of better words, couldn't wait to get out of the small town. And I jumped over to New York City. I went to Columbia for my undergrad and graduate. I got a master's degree in social work and started immediately working in I was really invested in at-risk populations. So I worked with sex offenders in prison. I worked with alternative schools in the Bronx. I worked ultimately, when I moved back to San Antonio after 10 years up on the East Coast, at Haven for Hope for a number of years. And then I landed this beautiful opportunity to lead this organization, Rise Recovery, and I've been here for 9 years.
Outstanding. Talk to us a little bit about your educational background. You went to school at Columbia.
I did.
And psychology, or?
Well, I was a did my bachelor's in urban studies, of all things. And what can you do with an urban studies degree? Well, I actually ended up working for Mayor Bloomberg at City Hall. He was the mayor at the time.
Nice.
It was a real gift, truly an amazing experience. I was a media relations person, so my job was to read the papers, watch the news, create a digest that would be on the desks of all of his staffers and him by 7 in the morning. It would be done. So I was up at 4 reading papers, digesting, and then sharing those reports. It was a really amazing experience because by the end of that day, I knew anything and everything that was going on in that city. It's because I had to read it all. And I got to really interface with some incredible leaders. And it was through that I experienced an understanding that social services don't exist without these beautiful teams and leaders engaging people who need the most support. So homeless services in New York City is managed by City Hall. And all of these other components of providing shelter, providing food, all of these things are managed by the city. And I know that's not the case in San Antonio, but in some ways it was even more beautiful because as a social worker, when I went back to get my social work degree and then moved back home, I was able to lead an organization doing that work, and we're in a completely different model where we're being supported by donors to do it, and city may provide funding support, but we're the ones that are closer to the people we're serving, and so I believe this is a better model.
Okay, good. Full disclosure, Evita and I have some history together. She once wrote for this magazine. Talk to us about Rise Recovery for folks that really don't understand exactly what you guys do here.
Yeah. So, I chose this work because as a social worker, I got to hire at Haven for Hope the very first peer support specialist. And so what that is someone with shared experience in lived recovery who is trained to provide really a bridge to motivate someone to think about change. And what I saw that kind of person doing that I couldn't do because I had my ethical guidelines required me not to share personal experience. I couldn't share how I related to someone sitting across as a counselor. It might take me years to develop a rapport with that person. But when I put that person experiencing homelessness in front of a peer who had just gone through and graduated from the Haven for Hope program, that motivation to change happened in seconds, in minutes. And I thought, I want to see more of that. And so this organization, Rise Recovery, 100% of our program staff are in recovery themselves. They are trained to do this work, and we serve primarily young people, so youth as young as 12 up to age 17, and then 18 to 30, and their families, parents, partners, loved ones, siblings, with a model that is, I think, the most effective for young people because, as you know, with any teenager, especially if you've been a parent of one, if mom or dad or an adult are talking, it sounds like Charlie Brown's mom to them. They're just blah, blah, blah. They're not listening. Their brains are really developed at that point to focus on engaging with people like them. And so they're much more likely to hear a message from someone who's been down that road and who was a young person who was experiencing what they were than they are to an adult figure, a clinical person. So that's what we're here to capture, is that motivation to change while they're young so that they don't end up in emergency services, in jail, in the hospitals, in the morgue as adults. We want to prevent that, and we believe the best way to do that is to engage with these young people and their families upstream.
Yeah, that's a very good point, having that peer influence. Or someone who's been there before and they understand what you're going through. Mm-hmm. So you've got the title of clinical director. Mm-hmm. So what's life like, a day in the life of the clinical director of Rise Recovery?
Oh my gosh. So, and this is a role I hope to pass the baton on at some point, because as the leader of a nonprofit, you have to wear many hats. Yeah. And most social workers don't end up leading the business of an organization. But I did. And so in this case, I have the capacity to not only oversee the business of the organization, the fundraising, but also the programmatic needs. So ensuring that anytime a crisis happens, anytime there's a challenge with our population that we're trying to serve, I get to go in and evaluate the next best steps. I get to assure our community that this is an evidence-based practice, that I am clinically trained to do this work, that I have the mental health experience and training to address the fact that so many of our clients also have mental health needs, and make sure that the kids and their needs are being met.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How did you find yourself in this position? Did you aim for this job, or did it find you?
Yeah, that's a really important question, because I have always wondered that myself. And so when I first got into this work, as a counselor, a social worker, I thought I would be hanging a shingle and for my own counseling office. I would get my, I would earn my LCSW. I would be providing, really one-on-one counseling. And when I started doing the work in the nonprofit Haven for Hope, I saw that, hey, I can help you, but if I could change, you're in an environment that's bigger than us. Mm-hmm. And if I could change these policies or these barriers that I see you're experiencing in this environment, we could do better work together. So I'm going to manage this program so I can fix these things. And once I got to the management role, I saw a new layer of barriers, of areas that needed resolving, of policies that could be changed, of advocacy that could be done. So I kept finding myself at a new precipice, seeing a new layer that needed to be addressed, and I wanted it for the sake of providing the best service for the people at the front line. So that's how I ended up in the kind of leadership position I'm at. I sort of accidentally found my way looking out, seeing that there were systems changes that needed to happen, and wanting to tackle them so that I could do better work. And so I became a manager, a director, a VP. I ended up kind of, I was reporting to the CEO and leading all of the transformational campus at Haven for Hope for a number of years before I found this opportunity. And because of all of that effort and all the experience I had interdepartmentally, reporting to the CEO, reporting to the news, reporting to all these different components of the business, and helping even raise money, because being able to share story from this very personal, hands on the ground, boots on the ground type of perspective helped people connect in a way that maybe someone who'd never done that frontline work could do. And so that was incredibly valuable, and I was able to bring all of those skills that I had learned to this organization. And thankfully, because of all that effort and because of the boot camp also of being really managed to excellence by New Star over at Haven for Hope, because they were our founding corporate support.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, the infusion of that corporate expectation, of Bill Greehy's expectation, if we did 99% well, he would want to know why we didn't do 100% well. So that driving force really did help me succeed. And I was able to bring all of those skills and all of those lessons learned to Rise Recovery, and we've grown substantially as a result of that. Absolutely.
You were mentioning earlier your operating budget is now $3.5 million?
Yes.
Which is huge. So how old is Rise Recovery, and how long have you been here?
So Rise Recovery is 47 years old. We have been around since the 70s, and it was formerly known as PADAP. Some people are very familiar with the Palmer Drug Abuse Program. And it initially started with a person in clergy who wanted to provide support to kids who were struggling with substance use. And it was a very casual sort of familiar support group kind of orientation. And they recognized, you know what, we can't really help these kids unless we help these parents. And so providing a parent support group was an addition. And then they realized these kids were outgrowing the program but wanted to stay connected, so we have a young adult program. And finally, the initiation of siblings was an added part. And what I love about that is that there is not a higher risk factor than having someone in your family who's using to target you as someone who's at risk for use themselves. So by providing support to siblings, it may seem kind of innocuous, but it's actually the best prevention work you could be doing. Is we identify that you've got a loved one that's using, let's focus on you, let's make sure you're not ignored, that you grow resiliently and identify who you are in this recovery of a family disease, and prevent you from making the mistakes that your loved one made. And so that's what we do. And now we went from those sort of support group model to also providing in-school services to 7 school districts across San Antonio. So we provide early intervention. This is not the You're Just Say No DARE program that I grew up with. That certainly scared some people from ever using. But no one was talking to the kids who were experimenting, as kids do, and guess what? They felt good, and it was working for them. It was solving their problem. No one was talking to them. And so that's what our goal is to provide that early intervention to kids who are starting to flag with behavioral issues, and let's stop it before it becomes a problem. And so we do a lot of work in alternative schools and a lot of work with counselor referrals. And then in addition to that, we also have San Antonio's first and only recovery high school, which is the most exciting initiative for our community, because these are kids who, the vast majority of the kids that we serve, they've already been kicked out of high school. They have already been disengaged for a number of months. They are losing traction in their ability to get that high school diploma because substance use is in their lives and they don't know what to do about it. And they're not welcome in those environments while actively struggling with a mental health diagnosis of substance use disorder, which is terribly unfair, but also very difficult to manage in a school system. So we do that. We will provide that recovery support for those kids who are actively struggling, who want recovery but don't know how to do it. We will help them find those steps, but more importantly, we will help them get across that finish line and get that diploma that has been deprived of them because of this disorder. And doing that sets them up for success in the future that would have just gone away if they had not had this program. And I saw that at Haven for Hope. I saw these folks who were 60 years old and said, as a result of of having a dysfunctional family, I experienced trauma. As a result of trauma, I started using drugs. As a result of drugs, I never graduated high school. So that's 10 feet of a hole, and then another 10 feet, and another 10 feet. We got to prevent these holes from being dug for these kids.
Now they're in a deep hole. Yeah.
Exactly.
And they're old. So.
And they're old, to get them out of that. So we are stopping that now.
What's a typical, do you call them patients or clients here?
We call them participants.
Participants.
Yeah.
What's a typical participant load here that you guys manage?
Oh my gosh, we see a few thousand kids every year come through our program. This is such a significant underrepresented need. We aren't seeing enough. There are more kids that need services, but we're a small nonprofit, and not everybody knows that we exist. We get a lot of referrals from juvenile justice, which we very much value. The Bexar County justice system is such a gift in being able to connect those kids to this care. But they're so far downstream already. They've already got criminal records. And so we want to get ahead. We want to be in every school district in San Antonio. We've seen probably 15,000 plus kids across the school districts, just providing these early prevention educations to them and to their teachers, their administrators. And we graduate, we have a class at the high school of 25 to 30 at any given time. And that's my favorite part, is going to those graduations, because every single one of those kids would not be walking a stage if it weren't for this program. And so that's kind of the makeup. We see a few hundred families, moms and dads, siblings as well, as I shared before, but also partners, people who love this person but don't know how to love someone in addiction, and help guide them to their own recovery, because a lot of times there's a lot of codependency with those loved ones that needs to be resolved, and they're addicted to their loved one. And it's at the expense of their own health, their own mental health, their family's health, their marriage. These are things that we are trying to resolve for them, regardless of whether their loved one gets help, because they can't change the outcome of that kid or that young adult, but they can change how they respond to it and make sure that they're taking care of themselves and their loved ones that are on board with the boundaries that they have and the health that they've set in place for themselves.
Outstanding. We're going to take a quick break. We're here with Miss Evita Morin, CEO of Rise Recovery. We'll be right back.
My name is Anastasio Caballero Hernandez. I was a man of simple beginnings, with calloused hands from hard labor and a heart full of words waiting to be spoken. Through cotton fields and restless nights, I dreamed of something more, of love, of family, of leaving behind a legacy greater than myself. These poems are my soul on paper, stories of perseverance, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Today, my daughter Consuelo brings these words to life in a way I could only have imagined. This is my heart, my story, my gift to you. Welcome to My Daddy, Poems from the Heart.
So, big question. How do you motivate? This line of work seemingly can be very stressful, but how do you motivate yourself and your team to stay committed to the cause every day?
Oh my gosh. It is both incredibly challenging sometimes, but also one of the easiest things to do to get up and go to this work. On one hand, the reality is that if we're not doing this work, there are kids who will die. And I say that because the drugs on the street today are not the same drugs that were on the street 20 years ago. One pill can kill because of fentanyl, and now carfentanil that is being mixed into drugs that used to look like street drugs 20 years ago. You would find them in a baggie, they would be, powdery and sometimes, tinged, but today they look like something a doctor would prescribe to you. They're pressed to look like Ritalin, like Xanax. And so kids think it's safe. Kids are assured by the person that they're buying from or by their friend that was a prescription, but it's not. And so we've gone to funerals, and these are teenagers, and they never had a chance at recovery because the kind of drugs on the street today will kill them.
You call it fentanyl?
Carfentanil.
Carfentanil.
And
C-A-R?
yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And
Okay.
so it will kill an elephant. So I think that it's critical that parents know how severe the types of drugs are on the street now, because it's just not the same. As one of our counselors once said, this is not your grandma's weed. It is. Even the marijuana that's on the street today is significantly more potent than what used to be back in the day when you thought it was okay. It's not okay anymore because there's kids' brains are developing. They're not cooked yet, and yet we're ingesting all of these high concentrations of drugs that are readily available because of legalization and because of access from adults who end up trickling it down to these kids, and that is so dangerous. And so that's one motivation, is we know that these kids' lives are on the line. The second motivation is when you see a kid in recovery, it is the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life. To see a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old go through bouts of addiction, struggle with treatment stays, and almost die, but then find a reason to do different. The wisdom that 16-year-old has will carry them for the rest of their lives. They will be astoundingly better than I could ever be because they got it early. They got their self-empowerment early. They got their, wake-up call that sometimes takes decades for us to get. Mm-hmm. And they got it now. So they're the most phenomenal humans you'll ever meet on the planet, are these teenagers in recovery. Yeah. Oh, what an easy reason to wake up.
Yeah.
Show up here.
Can that same therapy work for an older individual? Maybe they're 30 years old. 40 years old.
Absolutely.
Yeah, where they find that reason that you're.
You can always decide to pick a different choice. I think, though, that it's obviously harder when you've been doing it for decades because, but I will say the hardest thing is, and the hardest reason, the highest risk of becoming an adult who becomes addicted to substances is how early you started. Mm-hmm. Because if you started when you were 12, like I did when I tried alcohol, 11, 12, you never learned any other coping mechanisms. This is what worked. This is your easy button. And so you never became a young adult who learned, if I exercise, if I talk to a counselor, if I cry with my friend, if I do all these other things that help relieve all the anxiety and stress, if you never learned that, you only had one thing. And so the hardest part for an adult deciding to quit is, what do I do now? Like I don't see a future for my life because I don't know how to manage all of these things. I'm so used to checking out. And so that's why we address it early. But it absolutely, there's so many resources available to you. And the reason that we don't serve the older adults, we focus to up to age 35, is because there are resources available for adults. Not enough, but there's nothing for kids. And so we're filling that gap. But we also serve up to 35 because a lot of, as you know, and I know, a lot of 35-year-olds are still living with mom and dad. They're still dependent on a family. They're still impacting family and siblings, parents and siblings, in a way that is a family disease. And those parents need help even if they've got a young adult in their hands.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
So some careers we choose, other careers choose us. Did you choose to become a social worker, and what was your motivation?
Yeah, I think I always had a proclivity for leadership. Since I was in high school, I was the drum major in band. I was the lead actress in First. I was the editor of the newspaper. I just naturally wanted to make an impression and to leave a mark on the world since I was a kid. When I was very little, I always tell this story. I was living in a Dallas suburb. My mom had moved us around Texas for a while. And I was hanging up Save the Whales posters in a Dallas suburb like there were whales to be saved. It was just the way that I was. I was a very kind of compassionate child. And so social work became very natural to me. But I'll say it was probably being in New York City during 9/11 that really sealed the desire for me to serve in a community way, and then following that through with the social services, working for Mayor Bloomberg at City Hall, I really got to see what servants do and what civic duty is, and I wanted to be a part of that. And so social work was very, very easy for me.
Yeah. And what drew you towards substance abuse and mental illness? Was there, or these were just kind of a natural?
No, it wasn't natural. In fact, they teach, at least in my education, they taught me very little about substance use, but I was going through my own substance use struggle at the time. So I was in college struggling with alcoholism myself. I had already addressed, thought I had addressed a lot of mental health issues. I grew up with quite a bit of trauma, family trauma, and I had a lot of diagnoses. I was with psychiatrists and counselors trying to navigate depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, PTSD. And after I had done all this work, no one had ever connected the dots for me that alcohol was playing a part in that. No one had connected the dots for me that when you use a substance and you're on medication, you've actually just negated any effect that this medication is going to have on you. And so I was doing all the things, but I wasn't getting better. And it wasn't until I recognized that alcohol was something that I needed to be working on, or that I had an issue with, that I really started to see my life change. And so I was in 12-step groups. I recognized the familiarity of that recovery component. I became really impassioned with all things recovery, not just substance use, but addiction of many behaviors, sex addiction, gambling addiction. All of those things play a part and are very similar in how you address it and how you get out of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges you face in this path of becoming a leader in this particular space? This is a unique situation for a special person. What are some of the challenges you may have faced?
Oh my gosh. I would say the stigma of substance use, and I recognize that it is incredibly hard to talk about it with, especially if you're struggling, if a loved one is struggling or you're struggling yourself, because there's a lot of shame. And there's so much commercial normalcy that you should be able to drink, you should be able to have a good time, you should be able to do all these things. And if you can't, you're abnormal, and that makes you feel so just not right with yourself. And so the ability for someone to say, I need help, is very hard. And connecting someone to get that help is such a challenge. And then children, working with children who have issues like this is a challenge every day. It's devastating to see what these kids have gone through, the trafficking they've gone through, the abuses they've gone through that have led them down this road. And I think in addition to that, being able to share that story in an effective way that honors their confidentiality but also raises the needed funding for this mission is also a challenge, always, because we have to respect that confidentiality. But if we don't help people understand the need, then we can't keep our doors open and provide free services to those that need us.
Yeah. Free services, so you guys don't accept any insurance?
No, we don't. At
No.
this point, we do not. We are all, you can come in with not a dollar in your pocket, not an insurance resource available, and we will provide services to you. I can't guarantee that that will be, the future, because the needs are great, but that is our goal, is to be able, especially for those who have nothing, we want to be able to serve you.
And do you partner with other like-minded agencies?
So much partnership.
Okay.
Yeah, we cannot do our work without the support of others. And so we recognize that we are not in the education business, for instance. So when we created our Recovery High School, we partner with Brain Nation, and that is a charter district that provides all of our principal, our teachers, all of that component. And so it's through that collaboration that we can make that school possible. And then all of our mental health providers in San Antonio, the nonprofit Center for Healthcare Services, our hospitals, juvenile justice, as I mentioned, CPS. There are so many needs to partner, because a kid's problem is never just substance use. There's always a litany of issues that we've got to address to make this kid whole again. And we don't want to be the experts at everything. We want to be the experts at peer support for youth and families.
Yeah, just kind of focused on that particular
What
topic.
we do well.
As a leader, do you have a mantra that you kind of repeat to yourself or think about that keeps you kind of grounded in this particular space?
Oh my gosh. Yes,
Something maybe you kind of repeat at times to keep you focused and maybe to motivate you to get up every day and keep coming back at it?
I actually have a regiment that I do every week. And so I wouldn't say it's a quote or anything, but it is a practice. And so I wake up early and I schedule my Monday to spend time, first with God. I spend my time discerning what my prayer is with God that day. But also, I have a strong belief that when someone's name pops into your mind, there is a reason and purpose for that. You know the story about, you're on the roof and there's a flood and a boat comes by and you keep saying, no, I'm waiting for God to save me. And then when he ends up in heaven, God says, I sent you those 2 boats. Why didn't you get on them?
Yeah.
And so I think about that when I think of people who pop up in my mind. And so I ask myself, of those people, should I be thanking them? Should I be encouraging them? Should I be asking them for guidance? Because I believe those are the boats that God is sending me to address all of the insanity that's in front of me in running an organization and, working with this population every day. And I really spend my time making sure that I touch base with all of that support system that I believe God surrounds me with. So I'm a woman of faith, obviously, a leader of faith, and I believe that that is what's driven me to be here 9 years later.
Okay. Going to take another break. We're here with Miss Evita Morin. We'll be right back.
We are always trying to fix something, but we must start with forgiving. We must begin to open our hearts and follow God. We also must learn to forget, because if you don't forget, then you haven't forgiven.
Presented by Cedric D. Fisher and Company Publishers. What if the path to healing your deepest wounds began with a single, powerful choice? To forgive. In The Blessings of Forgiveness, Blaise LaBaye takes us on an extraordinary journey from the struggles of a childhood marked by colorism, racism, and family secrets, to finding hope, redemption, and the courage to heal. Blaise's story is one of resilience, of rising above the pain of a fractured family and systemic prejudice. His journey takes him from a small Louisiana neighborhood to the heights of success as a journalist and leader, but it's the lessons learned along the way that define him. Blaise discovered that forgiveness was not just a gift to others, but a pathway to his own freedom. This memoir is a message of hope for anyone seeking healing from their own struggles. Blaise's reflections on race, faith, and the enduring power of love remind us all that the hardest roads often lead to the most beautiful destinations. The Blessings of Forgiveness by Blaise LaBaye, available now wherever books are sold.
We've got some final questions here. So I wanted to bring up a real world question or a real world situation.
Right.
So What if you have a family who has a member of the family that's got either substance abuse or mental illness, and that particular member is either in denial or resist any type of help? Can you help that family out?
Yes, and with a caveat. So we serve a lot of parents here whose child is not interested in care. And so my first question is that kid a minor? Is that person, a young person, a minor? Because if they are, I've had my thoughts about mandated care. And as someone who believes in person-centered care, it is always better if that person wants to, walk alongside the care team.
Right.
But if you've got a minor, you've got enforcement that you can bring into that person, and you've got oversight and pressure that you can, and that is better than nothing. Sometimes all you're doing is planting seeds, but at least you're planting those seeds. And so, because when that person is an adult, your hands are tied. And that is, so take advantage while they're minors to get them the help they need while you can, frankly, force them to, because you have a very short window. But I get a lot of calls from parents who say, I really need help for my kid, but they don't want the help. So what can you do for me? And my thought is, let's start by helping you. Let's discern what you are doing to maybe unknowingly exacerbate the issue, maybe unknowingly overwhelm yourself by this issue. Let's help you recognize what you have control over, what you don't, what you caused and what you didn't, and establish what resources you have. And so a lot of times, if our kids are dependent on us for a number of things, it's really important for those parents to establish boundaries, to establish, okay, if you are going to continue to expect A, B, and C from me, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, then that's my boundary. And so if you have that capacity, that's probably the leverage, the best leverage you can use, but then holding to it. And that is very hard for a lot of parents because they're so afraid of what will happen if that person goes on their own. But then it's evaluating that it's an adult with adult making decisions. And if you have offered what you can and they're unwilling to accept it, then us learning to accept that is the reality that we live in. And so it's helping us stay in that space.
I think that is a phenomenal strategy. Just to sort of take away some of the things that they expect from you, and that may get them to kind of comply.
Just creating a boundary.
Yeah, that's outstanding. As a leader, if you could go back to your younger self and start all over again before you got on this journey, what would you do differently?
Oh my gosh, I would have established my boundaries earlier, and I have reached a point where I have some pretty healthy things that I do to take care of myself to be the best person for this work. And so I have recognized now that I can't give my best self if I am not my best self, and that takes sleeping enough, taking care of my health, going to my doctor's appointments, going to my dentist, the things that I think when we are addicted to work, as I have been in the past, we let go to the wayside, including our families. And so I had found myself earlier in my career, kind of neglecting everything and everybody at the expense of what I thought was my calling. And while I do agree this is my service work, so is my family. And they're not on a shelf. They should not be on a shelf as a result of me doing this.
Yeah.
And so that's probably my guidance to myself and to new leaders is this is a part of you. And unless you are single with nobody who loves or cares for you and you have nothing else, this is your purpose truly, and nothing else and nobody else wants that attention and you don't want to give that to anybody, then really evaluate what's important and put that in order. So.
Yeah. Of course, I believe as a good leader, you always need balance of the personal life and the professional life, just to just kind of stay sane. Because if you get too focused on one extreme, you're not successful or effective.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be week to week or even day to day, but you do have to pause and evaluate what needs to be done differently to get that balance back, for sure.
Right. Evita, as we get the privilege of interviewing some phenomenal leaders on the show, and one of the things we've learned is most leaders are readers. They're always reading something, and it turns out their favorite book, their go-to book, is often on their nightstand. What book's on your nightstand?
Oh my gosh, Radical Candor is what I am reading, and what I keep reading, and what I keep going back to. There is so much wealth in that book. about how to manage people, how to make difficult decisions, how to confront in a compassionate way, but in a way that is in the best interest of you, of that person, of the organization. So that book helps hold me accountable, and I highly recommend it to anybody.
Very nice. It's on your nightstand, right?
It is.
Okay, great.
It is.
Final question. There are a lot of viewers out here who are dealing with this issue at home, right? And they don't know where to go. So how would they reach out to Rise Recovery or you, or what's the best way for them to get some information?
Yes, so the best way is to visit our website and to give us a call. We have reception staff. If someone is so inclined or needs to see the space, you're welcome to visit between 8 and 5. We do serve minors, and so there is sort of a requirement for us to make sure that people have a check-in and get a badge before they engage with our programming, because we don't want people who have any kind of dangerous frankly, sex offenders on our campus because of the minors that we serve. And while I do have compassion for that population, there are other services that don't serve minors that can connect with that group.
Yeah.
And so we ensure that this is a safe place for all of our families, and want to welcome you. So showing up and asking for a meeting schedule, giving us a call, asking to connect with our family group. It starts with family. I do believe that this model works because it's a family model, and getting started with us, we're ready to help you.
What's your web address?
www.riserecovery.org.
Okay, how about a phone number, or maybe?
Yes, our phone number is 210-227-2634.
Evita, thank you very much. We're real proud of you. You're doing a very
Thank
necessary
you.
work. Evita Morin, CEO of Rise Recovery. We'll see you all next time.
If this is your first time joining us and you'd like more information, you could find us at influencesa.com. That's INFLUENCESA.com. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest. And for this particular episode of the show, all future and past episodes of the show, pull up your YouTube search bar, toss in San Antonio's Influence Magazine Show. That word is critical. Get that word in there. When you get there, please subscribe, give us a like or a thumbs up, and hit that bell so that you don't miss any future episodes of the show.